Hello and welcome to All About A-League, the show that's all about A-League, Socceroos and everything to do with the world game in Australia. My name is Gabriel D'Angelo and with me to talk about all things A-League is 3ZZZ broadcaster Bernd Merkel. Hello Bernd.
Hi Gabriel.
And journalist from Neos Cosmos, Alex Enifantis. Hello Alex.
Good evening Gabriel.
Before we talk about all things football, let's go over the results for round 26 of the A-League, which started off on Thursday night with Sydney FC defeating Perth Glory 1-0. On Friday, Adelaide United beat Melbourne Victory 1-0. On Saturday, Newcastle destroyed Brisbane Roar 6-1. The Central Coast Mariners defeated the Wanderers 3-1. And on Sunday, Wellington squeezed past Melbourne City 3-2. Now over to the ladder, and Perth Glory remain on top with Sydney FC in second. Melbourne Victory, Adelaide United, Wellington Phoenix and Melbourne City make up the top six, while the bottom of the ladder remains exactly the same as it has been for a while now, with Newcastle, Western Sydney, Brisbane Roar and Central Coast making up the bottom. Some very interesting results over the week. Starting with you, Bernd, which game for you was match of the round?
Well, if you look at Sunday, the match in Wellington Phoenix against Melbourne City, it was definitely very good football and both teams needed to get something out of the match. And you can see how important that is for the A-League, that you don't have matches at the end of the season where they just can play around and don't have to lose anything. Wellington was up and had a good start. Melbourne came back, especially in the second half, and an outstanding Roy Krishna performance. So for him now being on top of the ladder for the Golden Boot race, I really wish him good luck, and would be great also for the whole Oceania spot and the whole region if someone like him would win that competition.
Yeah, that game, but also I wanted to mention about the game that happened at the Coopers between Adelaide and Melbourne Victory. We saw Victory put up a pretty good fight against United, but in the end it was Adelaide that walked away with the win, which now puts them in a favourites position, if not gives them that home game in the playoffs. So I think that game was pretty decent as well, pretty good. So, yeah.
Do you think Victory was still, again, a bit disappointing?
Once again in the season, I think that Victory have a bit of a problem. They're a bit too predictable in the way they play. I feel like, I've mentioned this in the past, they don't have a plan B in their strategy, in their formation. So that's a bit of an issue they're going to have to try and solve heading into the playoffs if they want to walk away with something good in the season.
Well, with the players they have, they should be doing much better. But I just wanted to touch up on Wellington. It seemed like when the news came out that Mark Rudin was not going to be coaching at Wellington next season, it seemed like they just shut the switch and they weren't as sharp as they were during the previous rounds. Is it safe to say that after their performance against Melbourne, that their season is back on track, that they've gotten over that and that they're going to cause a few upsets come final season?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see what position they end up at. That's definitely something important to take into consideration. But yeah, I still think that we have more to see from the Phoenix, and they have a lot of strong players like Krishna, Williams, Philip Couto, who we have definitely a lot more to see from.
Yeah, and I think also for the players, I mean, they can't use just that as an excuse after that season to say, oh, look, now that the coach is leaving and that's why we didn't perform that well anymore. I mean, it will be interesting for next season, what they're going to do there. Magrudan now having left the club, they did a very good job with getting him. So I expect a lot from them still for the finals. I would say they definitely can cause some upset, whomever they're going to play. Highly likely they only have away matches, but still I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, and you guys did touch up on the Melbourne Victory and Adelaide United game, and yes, I mean it was a very tight affair. When these two teams play, it always is. But there is something that I think we need to also mention, in the fact that Donachie, he scored a goal and it was disallowed. Honda, he should have been sent off after with a second yellow. So these two glaring mistakes from the referee and from the VAR in such an important game, and with finals coming just around the corner, I'm sort of worried that these sorts of mistakes would sort of creep into the finals as well. And we don't want to see a team a team's season go down the drain, or that we're talking about the inconsistencies or the bad refereeing come finals time. Am I being a little bit too pessimistic, or what do you guys think?
Well, we always need to understand that this is football, and a referee will always, there will be mistakes. And with VAR being introduced into football, they're trying to limit those mistakes. However, we're seeing it implemented into Australian football, and I think it's being implemented in a bit of a wrong way. That's my opinion, that's the way I see it.
I think over the whole season, at least, it has now been improved. So, especially at the start, there were a lot of situations and decisions.
Especially in the beginning.
Yeah, where you were sitting there and thinking, okay, now the ref watched it the 11th, the 12th time, and then suddenly he decides, yes, this is what, of course, that causes a lot of problems and issues and challenges. I mean, with Donaki, I don't know why they didn't use the VAR in that situation. Honda is was there a little bit of a bonus involved, you know?
Yeah.
So if it had been any other player, maybe
Exactly right.
he might have been sent off. But otherwise, regarding that, I'm a bit more optimistic for the finals. And let's just hope that there won't be any bad mistakes that have to decide a game. I mean, look, that goal hasn't been given, okay, but it was still, 50th minute or something like that, right? So, yeah, it could have changed the complete outcome, but Adelaide was defensively so well structured, and
a bad mistake like that from the referee could cost a championship, really. So hopefully it won't happen. But moving right along to the players and moments of round 26, starting with you, Alex, who and what caught your attention this week?
Well, of course, it was Roy Krishna who scored the hat-trick, but apart from that, in the same game, we had Riley McGree, who scored the 2 goals. Unfortunately, his team didn't walk away with any points, but still his effort was solid. We had Philip Coulter, who made a great performance in the game. And in the Aurora versus Jets game, we had Joy Champness, who scored a couple of goals. So there were many great performances, and it's difficult to choose just one. But if you had to, I say it would be Krishna.
Well, I want to go with 2 players that actually made their announcement this season, Matt McKay, Brisbane Roar, and also Alex Brosk, Sydney FC. So 2 players that really are leaders. They were leaders over almost a decade, or longer. Alex Brosk, although he was away, I think, for 2 years in Japan and then also Middle East, you feel like he was always there with Sydney. And these are the players and the faces the A-League needs. And hopefully there will be new players now stepping up and getting into that position. Because that's what the A-League lacks a bit. So with all respect, those marquee players, normally they leave after 1 or 2 years, right? And somebody like Thomas Broich, for example, or Del Pierre at Melbourne Victory, they are really exceptions that you think they had outstanding years and they stayed also for a while. So all my respect to those 2 players. Very disappointing what Brisbane played for Matt McKay's match, but otherwise, those were the 2 I want to mention.
That's true. I just want to get back on your comments regarding Roy Krishna, Alex. I mean, you're right in saying about Roy Krishna is having an amazing season so far. Absolutely. Last season he scored 4 goals. So far he scored 18, and it doesn't look like he's going to stop anytime soon. I mean, how much of that can we say is the influence of Mark Rudan's attacking philosophy? I mean, would he have scored so many goals if he was being coached by Warren Joyce, for example?
Well, that's the influence of a coach. He comes in, he works on his players, and it's not just like, he doesn't just come tell them, that's your position, go and score goals. He works on his on a player's psychology. He works on his mentality, on the way the player. He takes a look at how the player operates inside the field, and it's all around. So yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of what Krishna has done this season is credit to Mark Rudan.
But it's probably not only the coach, because as a player, when you're on the pitch, of course, you need that respect and also the support from your coach, but also all the other players. The whole team this season really performs very well. So I would say, Rudan had his impact, but the whole team this season is really outstanding.
Yeah. Yes, of course. We saw that in the previous game when Krishna wasn't in the team, and then Williams came out as a hero and scored a hat-trick.
Thank you, boys. Some interesting points made. Stick with us, because on the other side of the break, we have our exclusive interview with the CEO of the brand new A-League outfit, Western United, Maurice Bisetto. Don't go anywhere. You're watching All About A-League. Tonight on All About A-League, we welcome Maurice Bisetto, the CEO of Western United Football Club. Western United is one of 2 clubs to receive an A-League licence and will join the A-League in season 2019-2020. Maurice, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Gabriel. Great to be here.
I just want to start by asking you about the Western United bid. During the whole process, there was a lot of attention, especially towards Team 11's bid, and yet there wasn't much known about Western United. What was it so unique about your bid, and what was it that got you over the line in comparison to Team 11 and others?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think Victoria were represented with 3 really strong bids, and I think ultimately what differentiated us were 2 things. One is our clear demographic being representing the west of Melbourne, and secondly the arrangement we had with Wyndham Council and the partnership arrangement to obtain the value capture, enabling us to build and own our own stadium, I think was the clinching factor.
So with 2 teams now already in Melbourne, I mean, from an objective point of view, we want to gain interest in soccer in general, right? I mean, we have 2 teams already. So what's your plan that you don't want to just take supporters from Melbourne Victory and Melbourne City, but instead really get more people that are not so much interested in football at all?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, if we were to generate in our first year 5,000 members and 3,000 came from Victory and 2,000 came from City, then it's a net zero sum game and of no benefit really to anyone. So our intention is really to identify those latent football supporters throughout our communities. Wyndham itself has 270,000 people. It's the fastest growing council in Australia with a number of different communities. So we think there's a strong latent support there waiting to be unlocked, and that will be our intention through our community and fan engagement programs.
So we already know about the transfer of Panagiotis Konne, and recently you also announced the transfers of Apostolos Stamatelopoulos from Adelaide United and Dylan Pierias from Melbourne City FC. Should we take it that you're making a bit of an approach towards the Greek community?
Look, certainly not deliberately. I think when it comes to Panagiotis Konne, we did have a number of conversations with a number of player agents and managers who look after some players that potentially could have been our first marquee. I'm actually reasonably good friends with Panagiotis' current manager, and so through him we were able to secure Panagiotis. It wasn't really deliberately aimed at identifying the Greek community. I mean, we're a multicultural country, we're a multicultural city, it's a multicultural sport. It's going to make sense that our 5 foreigners will be representatives of those local communities throughout Melbourne. I think that's the logical connection people are going to naturally make.
In terms of coaching, there's been a lot of rumours about Mark Rudan being the inaugural coach of Western United. Is there any truth to the rumour that he will be coaching, or is he on your wish list? Is there a wish list in terms of coaches? Is he on it?
Look, we had a wish list. We have signed our head coach, but for contractual reasons, we can't announce it. But the coach has been signed for a little while now, and so when I say signed, we've agreed terms with our coach. So it's just a matter of letting due course happen, and then when the time's right and it's mutual for all stakeholders involved, we'll announce the head coach.
In other words, it's definitely Mark Rudan.
In other words, I say that.
So we're just letting the season play out.
No, because following that up is just my question. When you talk about Marcus Bubble, for example, the Western Sydney Wanderers, they say, he's a good coach, but is it on the one hand, but then also they say he was not involved in building up the team, so he should get another season to really show his strength. So that's why I was also interested in, on the one hand, you're already building up the team, but how much is the new coach already involved in selecting that?
Yeah, well, the head coach has a strong team. We'll have a strong team around him. We've already obviously had the announcements with John Anastasiadis and John Hutchison.
Yeah.
Both who I think in my mind will, if not already, will be future A-League coaches in their own rights themselves. So they've been working really diligently, going through each of the players, making sure the strategy around the squad selection in terms of experience and youth and the combination of positions, making sure we've got cover in every position. They've been working on that for a long time. The coach, I suspect, has had some input in the background and isn't. We're not doing this in a vacuum. That would not be the most sensible thing to do.
Okay.
Right. Recently, there was a rumour regarding a former AC Milan player and Brazil international Alejandro Pato. So I'd like to ask, how much truth was there in that rumour? And based on that rumour, what else can we expect to see regarding marquee players?
Look, there was a fair bit of truth to that rumour in terms of Alexander Pato. And we'd gone through the machinations, with the FFA in terms of exploring the opportunities with the marquee fund and the support that the FFA gives for certain high-profile players. And unfortunately, Alexander, unfortunately for us, for Western United and Australian football fans, he chose to go home to Brazil and signed for Sao Paulo, I think a week or two ago.
Sure. You've mentioned Wyndham City Council quite a lot. What is their level of support? What is it that they're offering Western United in terms of infrastructure and other support to the club?
Yeah, the arrangement we have with Wyndham Council has pretty standard public to private partnership arrangements, with state governments tend to do most of the time. I think this is the first time in Australia that a local government has done that, and really it is contributing a portion of land to enable us to value capture and with that help finance the building of the stadium.
So now that you're in the A-League and let's say you had a wish list, I mean the A-League should expand, I think. Where would you see, we know then we get another club in Sydney, but where would you see the future? Let's say we're talking about an expansion to 16 clubs. Where should the next teams come from? And the second question, that context, when we're talking about relegation and promotion, right? There's on the one hand the A-League license until 2034, I think. But how do you see that aspect of relegation and promotion?
Okay. They're two questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tackle the first one.
Yeah.
I think expansion, and everyone would agree. I think future expansion of the A-League is important.
Yeah.
Where expansion takes place, that's a tougher question.
Yeah.
The global model for where football is the number one sport and operating at its highest capacity involves derbies. So whether you talk about Liverpool, Everton, Manchester United, Manchester City, AC Milan, Inter Milan, Glasgow Rangers, Glasgow Celtic, it's in around derby. So in terms of expansion, you would think that major cities that have teams, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, potentially could get a second team and create that derby environment. But also, I think there's some really strong cases for Canberra, Tasmania, and areas that need professional football representation to enable the game to grow and filter through to the grassroots.
Yeah.
The second question was around promotion.
Yeah.
Look, I think if you're a football fan and as I am and have been brought up with football globally, promotion relegation is a must. I mean, it's the tears on relegation and the joy of winning championships, all of that emotion drives really important behaviours, ambitious behaviours, drives investment. I think ultimately once, and I think the word I'm looking for, once there's I'm just trying to think of the word, but once there's enough solid foundation for the sport, I think absolutely second division, national second division, and then ultimately promotion relegation has to be the way to go.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Maurice. We wish you and Western United all the very best.
Thanks very much. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Welcome back to All About A-League, and we are now moving on to our tips for the upcoming games for the last round of the home and away season, round 27. Just a reminder, all games are in Eastern Standard Time, so check your local listings for times in your area. On Friday night at Amy Park, Melbourne City faces Central Coast. Will this be a good practice game for City before the finals, Alex?
Well, actually, the Central Coast have shown some good signs in their past few games, and this is mainly credited to new coach Alan Stajic, who hopefully renews his contract with the club at the end of the season. So it should be a fairly even contest. Of course, City still have playoff football in their minds, but it should be a good game.
Yeah, I mean, City surprisingly played well, I must say, in Wellington.
Yes.
So, and that it gives us a little bit of hope. Still, at this stage, it looks like that it might be a derby in the elimination finals, which would be really exciting. So City needs to get something on the pitch. And as Alex said, on the other hand, I mean, the Mariners really improved a lot with the new coach. They feel more stable now in defense and already had 2 wins, whereas before he came just had 1 win. So, and I agree, hopefully he will stay. But City will win that, a close one, but 2-1 for City.
Yeah, I think City are going to win, but you're right. I think that the Mariners will play good, only because there are some players in that team that want to impress the coach for next season. But who knows what's going to happen. Saturday at McDonald Jones Stadium, it's Newcastle versus Sydney FC. Can the Jets end a disappointing season with the wind burned?
Well, the Jets had a great match in Brisbane last weekend, although Brisbane was really, really bad, very disappointing. Sydney played another Champions League match. So it's always like, yeah, what's happening with Sydney now, because they secured the 2nd spot. They have 1 week off. Are they trying to take it a bit more easy, or do they really want to play full spot on and keep the momentum, also knowing that they have a week off afterwards? So it could be an interesting match. I go with a draw.
Well, both teams have good psychology and lack of motivation at this point. So I think I'm going to go with the Jets, mainly because Sydney might want to hold back a bit ahead of the playoffs.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. I think Newcastle are going to win purely because Sydney don't want any injuries for the finals. 7:50 at ANZ Stadium, the Western Sydney Wanderers encounter Melbourne Victory. Will Marcus Babbel end his first season with a win here, Alex?
Well, it might be sort of a similar situation as with Sydney FC, although in Victory situation they might want to look for a win just because of psychological reasons, because as we said earlier, they haven't been doing well recently. They might want to find a win just to give themselves a boost ahead of the playoffs.
Well, I'm a bit pessimistic regarding the Wanderers' performance. You feel like there will be a big clean-up after this season, so you still don't know which player stays, which player will leave. And yeah, if you look at their performance last weekend at the Mariners, that was really, really disappointing. On the other hand, Victory played Champions League this week as well, but I think the Victory needs a win because they have the week later already the first elimination final. So I go with Victory.
Yeah, I think you're right. Purely on motivational elements, I think Melbourne Victory will win. And to finish the round, Sunday at HBF Park, Perth Glory plays Wellington Phoenix. Shall we pencil this one for the Glory Burned?
Well, the long distance derby, as it is called, right? I don't know how long is the flight from Wellington to Perth? Very long.
Yeah.
So
that's a technical term.
Yeah. But look, I think both teams are, for me, the 2 teams of the season.
Yeah.
So Perth definitely deserved Premiership winners, and Wellington, so I don't know when the last time was that they went into the finals. So it's from that end, it could be a very good one. On the other hand, Perth, wasn't that convincing in Sydney, but I think Perth is going to win this one.
Yeah, it could turn out to be the game of the round if both teams take it seriously. But on the other hand, we have playoffs coming, and teams are sort of trying to prepare themselves and have a lack of injury, so we have that too.
Yeah, for that reason I'm picking Wellington. That's all for this week's edition of All About A-League. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to Maurice Bisetto from Western United for joining us on the show. Thank you to Bern and Alex. Thank you, boys.
Thanks, Gabriel.
I'm Gabriel D'Angelo. Thank you for watching. Hope your team wins. Bye for now.